Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Or no, excuse me, it's Thursday today. I'm so messed up. I travel and remote viewings, my exciting life. And yeah, I just woke up. I'm having my coffee. I've got a full schedule today, so I'm not going to be able to spend much time talking to you. But I want to go ahead and review last night's remote, and I think it's going to answer a couple of questions that people have. The first thing I want to do today, the first thing that came up in last night's remote, going to grab my coffee here, is Robert Mueller. I did a meditation on Robert Mueller last night, and he got a song. So as I was focusing on Robert Mueller, I heard that silly, flirtatious song, sooner or later you're gonna be mine. Sooner or later it's gonna be fine. 'Cause I always get my man. So I'll put the lyrics below this video, but it talks about having you on a platter. You know, I always get my man. So that's Mueller's song, and it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, and it goes back to that joke that he gave 6 months ago during the remote, where he basically said he always gets his man. So I want to review what Mueller did as it appears in the remotes, so that people understand how Mueller got his man. So remember when we did remotes a year ago, and we saw that Mueller had basically, he and the FBI had been tapping phones, and one of the phones that was tapped was Cohen, Michael Cohen. So anybody that was communicating with Russians, Russian operatives, the intelligence agencies basically were allowed to tap phones because there was a foreign national on the other end. So they ended up tapping phones, and they were monitoring the situation. So they intercepted calls from Cohen, and I believe somebody from the Trump administration, possibly Don Jr., saying to destroy documents. Some of the and this was because, according to the remote, what they had done in their infinite wisdom is they had taken incriminating evidence and information from the Trump organization because they thought they were going to get a raid, and they put it over at Michael Cohen's offices because aren't we smart, and that'll protect us because he is our lawyer, he's Trump's lawyer, and so everything will be safe over at the offices, and then we can just order him to destroy the documents. Well, it didn't quite work out the way that they had hoped, and instead they got a search warrant for Cohen's offices. They went in and they got the documents by raiding Michael Cohen's office. So Michael Cohen then turned evidence over to Bob Mueller, and Bob Mueller interviewed him for 30 hours. And specifically what we saw Mueller focusing on was, contrary to what people may think about the Mueller report, the actual investigation itself, Mueller was following the money, and specifically he was following dark money. So after he had interviewed Cohen for 30 hours, he then took that information and broke it into separate investigations and existing investigations that were taking place at the FBI. And those became buried in those existing investigations, which had to do with money laundering, bribing people of interest. And I'll explain how that whole thing takes place and why the Russians did it and how the Russians did it. But basically, so Mueller then handed Cohen over with recommendations to SDNY that they give him a lenient sentence because of cooperation with Mueller. He got, as we all know, a couple of years. We also saw in a remote view that he was leaving prison and continuing to cooperate with SDNY, and possibly will be the state of New York by not only answering questions regarding documents, but showing how these scams worked, naming names, etc. So he basically went under FBI protection. So that's what Mueller did. He handed Cohen over to SDNY. SDNY then was able to get information about the mob, the Russian mob, and the Russian mob's involvement, not just in money laundering and human trafficking, etc., but in how they were influencing elections. So that relationship between Cohen and Mueller is very significant in terms of the information that's being collected. Mueller then gave the documents, were given back to Cohen, and then Cohen turned around and handed all of that over to the House of Representatives, something like six large suitcases worth of information. Now I want to go back to review what I had said about the Russian mob and how the Russian mob and Russia operated during the Cold War, and also with challenges regarding blockades and sanctions. So what they did was they took all that money, that cryptocurrency, bribes, etc., and then they decided to launder it. And so what they were doing was they were laundering it by putting it in accounts in places like Deutsche Bank and AEB, which was sanctioned Russian banks. The banks got sanctioned under the Obama administration because Obama found out what they were up to. So here's what they were up to. They were taking all of that dirty money and they were laundering it, but specifically they were laundering it with people of interest. So they would take somebody who was a wealthy, famous businessman, publicly he presented as a businessman, and they used him as a front for laundered money. And that's basically what they did to Donald Trump. So there are specific places in the world that Russia was interested in infiltrating, and it did it slowly and deliberately. And specifically, they were interested in the financial district of New York, the political power that they would have if they went into the financial district of New York. And this area has come to be known as Little Putin Island. The Little Putin Island, where the Russians were buying up real estate and bribing people of interest in exchange for favors. So what Trump was doing was that he was using his properties as money laundering schemes. So he would go in and he would put up a fake business or fake property, etc., and then that they would run sometimes people through that property, illegal businesses through that property, while presenting the front and the star who would go in and present it as if it was a real business. But when the Fed started to look at the books, they started to realize that many of these businesses were fake. Not only were they not making money, but it was costing millions of dollars to prop up these fake businesses, these fake casinos, these fake golf courses, etc. They weren't making any money. The real way that they were making money is through these laundering schemes, so that the Russians had a way of running their business. So they were taking compromised people who were in financial trouble and then turning around, and those people had to become part of the scheme, but also those people were beholden to Russia because they were taking all this dirty money for their own business. Enter Donald Trump. So they started working with Donald Trump, and specifically they had him buying up real estate and starting businesses in areas of interest that were of special interest to the Russian government. And that brings us back to Turkey. So the reason why we all know that Russia had interest in Turkey and Syria had to do with the economic potential of doing business in those areas. And so that was basically what happened. Trump went in and he began to establish businesses in those areas where the Russians wanted to have a stronghold, where the Russians wanted to do business, and where the Russians wanted to eventually take political power in that area. And so where you find Trump businesses, you'll find Russian money laundering, bribing political persons, and attempts to destabilize governments, etc. And that's how the scheme worked. What Mueller did was he basically did follow the money, as I said. He put everything into existing investigations. and sat back and did what he always does, which is to wait for the person to bite and to lull the person in. It's an old trick by the FBI. You lull the other person into believing that the investigation has ended, that nothing came of it. The person gets sloppy. Meanwhile, the investigation is vigorously continuing. And that is where we find ourselves. 2 to 3, I think it was 2 days ago, I remote viewed that there would be more indictments coming in, because the feeling of the energy when I go into it is indictments, fear, another major hit. And we now have the 2 indictments of Igor, I can't remember these people's names. It's Igor got arrested. The 2 Russian operatives who were working with Giuliani. Now they're suspecting that Giuliani will also be indicted. There are interviews with Giuliani going back to 2004 where he's praising Putin, and it looks like Giuliani was probably compromised by the Russian mob. It could have been that they targeted him because he was working for the FBI uncovering the mob. He got into financial trouble, who knows, but Giuliani is about to fall. The point here of all of this is that for people who think that Mueller didn't do his job, really they need to go back and look at not only the arrest, but specifically the arrest, the charges, and the cooperation of Michael Cohen, because he was the lawyer that helped bury and protect this scheme. And he's been quite helpful to the feds in terms of finding out what's going on and the future arrests that are going to be happening. All right, thanks everybody for checking out this quick video. If you're still trying to get in for a reading, you can find out more by going to tarotwithwhimsy.com, and you can schedule your phone reading there. People want to know if the readings are in person or by phone. They're by phone. I call you. Unless it's a foreign government, unless it's a foreign country, in which case just email me how you want to talk to me. I have WhatsApp. And I can call you via WhatsApp if you prefer that, or Skype. I'm also doing Zoom now. So, all right. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Peace out. Bye.